Hi, my name's Dow Tate.
And welcome to 21st Century Journalism, or as I call it, J1. And that's just one of those things that's hung around forever. But this class is a foundations class for the publications. I'm sure many of you have seen the publications, whether it's the newspaper. Um, Here, there's one from 2 years ago, one from last year, or the website, smeharbinger.net, or the yearbook. And as you can see through here, this is the first one that they published right after everything shut down. But that's kind of the nature of it. It's something real that they do once they move on to those publications. Those are student driven, student run. And when we shut down, for the most part, the schools, those kids didn't. And they pushed through, continued to publish the website, as well as 2 yearbooks, whether it was in person, hybrid, or remote. Um, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because we're here right now. This is 21st century journalism. This is a foundation class. And it is one where I'm going to push them. If you know much about the publications here at the school, there's a storied history that I'll come back around to. But it's here where we start setting standards of what to expect. We start with the basics, just stories, ideas, interviewing, and then we move into writing. It's a heavy based writing based class. So if your son or daughter struggles a little bit there, they may struggle. But also, I tell kids all the time, I'm going to push you. So no matter even you've been told you're a good writer, publishing is a whole different game. So we really trying to steer these kids to where they understand what it takes to publish. Because again, some of them, even in a semester from now, may be publishing. And it's a very real experience there. So I started here and get them used to that idea. And one of the things we always talk about is we don't want them interviewing parents, relatives. We want them to get out there and explore what that's like to just interview somebody potentially that you don't know. And that's kind of the challenge, I think, early on that I've seen over the last few years. It's always been the challenge, but it's more so, I think, in the last few years, is these kids maybe haven't spent much time talking to people. A lot of things are done texting and on their computers. So I tell them early on, I mean, that's the challenge. You are going to have to be willing to get out there and talk to people. And some maybe social anxieties or whatever, they have to work through it and want to work through it. So that's one of the challenges of the class. And they have to have a little bit of thick skin because, yep, I am going to push them. And we'll talk more about that as we go. But for now, you can kind of follow along with the class in Canvas. It's where you'll see their assignments. There'll be a few things we'll talk about in class that may not show up in Canvas, especially now that we're in person. But for the most part, everything's going to be there, especially for assignments are concerned, and some of the handouts and such that we'll do. So feel free to follow along there. So what to expect in the class. As I said, all those kind of things you'll follow along there. And the basics of the class is this is very much a classroom environment type thing, where very much different than a publications class, which is very much student driven. This one's more me driving. So we're going over those basics now. But if you've heard anything about me, you know that when I push kids, it's most of that pushing is going to show up in the test grades, or really the rough test grades especially. But the daily grades can be easy hundreds if they just kind of keep up and so along. And that's going to be 40% of their grade. And then the test grades are going to be 60%. The test grades are all original project work. So the first one's an interview. And so they'll do that. And but they'll also, you understand something about this, one thing to understand to make sure, just remember that first rough grade may be tough because that's where I kind of set the standard for what we're looking for, the sort of level we're looking for. But it's always going to come with a ton of feedback. And I've heard kids say, wow, that's a pretty honest grade. I had a junior say this last year, something about I've never had to grade a teacher grade so honestly based on the work. Well, yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it. But what I always say is those rough grades can come up. And that's the thing I believe. You may turn in a test grade, or excuse me, a rough draft of a test, like the original interview, and I may beat you up on that. But that means the final, you're going to go back and you're going to be able to redo and you can replace that grade. But I always tell kids, look, don't assume you can just get away with not doing a rough draft because you really want that feedback, because that's where a lot of the learning comes along, and that's where a lot of the expectations are set. So there's always plenty of feedback in here, and I encourage them to seek that out. between a rough and a final, come see me. You can come see me during seminar. I'm there usually after school Wednesdays. Here in a few weeks, we'll start publishing. And so I'll start being there in the evenings. So I have kids working in the room. They can feel free to come up then and get some feedback. And I also give them some feedback from some other people in the staff, especially once we get into project work. But they'll also get plenty of that from me. I mentioned we kind of start with, it's a heavy writing class, but we do some design work a little bit later. We get into, especially second semester, we do a little ad design that works in there. We do a little photo editing, and then a little more InDesign work there. But then, like I said, for the most part, especially this first semester, it's interviews first one, then we get into news, and then we'll get a little ad design, feature writing, and then, like I said, some photo editing. Those are kind of the big sections here, but we mix in a lot of other things as we go along. But this is the key. So just make sure you encourage that, because that's one of the things that's going to really challenge some of these kids, is to actually talk to people that they don't know. I will tell you that as we get into this, each of past interviewing, each of the projects comes with something I'll call an optional test grade. So as I've already said, the rough draft grades, they can replace with a final grade in the regular test. I also do some in-class episodes, and you'll hear me talk about, or some in-class exercises, and I'll call them UILs. They're based on these Texas contests like this, where the information is given to you. And then we'll do some writing of that in class, and that'll be a rough draft that they'll turn in for a mandatory daily. But then I also call them optional test grades. And what I mean by that is, in the final draft of this, they can redo the final draft and turn that in, and it becomes an optional test grade. And that's a grade that won't hurt them. So it's kind of extra credit in its own right. And if it hurts I wait till the end of the quarter to put it in, or the end of the semester. And if it hurts their grade point, I take it out. So it's a simple way for us to work on the process in the class, but then be able to also have there some things that they can increase their grade point. Because, like I said, don't freak out at that first rough draft that comes in for interviewing or for any of the projects, because those can be pretty ugly. But if they really push and they get feedback and they really work to redo it, then it can be a lot better by final draft is concerned. Because really that's what I look for. I mean, you can look at this. It's all about process for me, and it's sort of going through the process and not one and done draft of any story or anything. And I think sometimes you've been in, or even just one rough draft, or what is it, the old version of where you do the final draft and they call it a rough draft, so you mark it up and turn it in as rough. Yeah, that doesn't work here. So if you look here, this is like a yearbook spread, and you can sort of see all the different versions of it that the kids went through to get it. And really, that's anything, when we got to our photography, they're playing, this shows you what it looks like on staff, where they'd come up with an idea, and that was Katie Drake, the photo editor, kind of modeling a pose. And then they went out and started shooting these portraits. And you can see all the varied styles and setups that went with that. And to get to the final image, which you see in front of you, and there it is on the spread. What I try to do is in the classroom is mirror that, is getting them to go through the process, work and rework drafts, build on that, get better. And it really has paid off over the years. This is a program that in the end, it's turned out, Riley here at Atkinson, I don't know if you've heard of Riley, but Riley was our 4th National High School Journalist of the Year at Shawnee Mission East since I've been there. And which really now sets the national record. We were tied with another school. And you see some of the cool things. She got to go on Kelly Clarkson this summer. And so that was really fun. You can kind of see there. She's actually, they're flying her out later this year. She's going to speak as part of the National High School Journalist of the Year in LA in the spring. So there's really kind of cool things. But it's not just sort of that level, that one kid, because if you look, this is from a couple of years ago of high school kids here, or like, kids on the publications that have gone on to win some local, state, or national award. And so we kind of post them up. And this is early in the year. So there's still wall space. And that's pretty cool that it really fills up as the year goes on. And the other thing you'll notice is a lot of different faces there. So these kids have seen some success through the program. So that's what I always try to remind these kids, that we're pushing you for a reason and you can do this. And I tell them very early on, I say, I may push you, but I believe you can get there. And if you just don't put your tail between your legs, don't run from it, come fighting back and look to get better. And really, over the years, I've seen it as we work through it, it pays off for a lot of kids. And it's paid off for the publications. These are the awards that you can see. I've actually been lucky enough to have all 4 publications be named. And I say 4, that's my old school at Hillcrest High School in Dallas, but all 4 of them were named top 100 over the last 100 years. So the National Scholastic Press Association named its top 100 kids, or top 100 programs, scholastic publications over the last 100 years. And Hillcrest was one of those, but then Shawnee Mission East, all 3 publications were on that list. And the yearbook was actually in the top 10. So that's a pretty cool thing, but it just shows you some success that's been there, and that's kind of really ahead for the kids. And I always say this, and I use this as an example with my with the kids on the first day. And I said, it's not just that we're getting for, we're looking to give you skill sets. Because to me, it's not important that a kid goes on into journalism, because I believe it gives them skill sets that they can use in whatever job that they use, the writing, the design, the thought process, the creativity, all that feeds kids, and has helped a lot of kids along the way in whatever jobs that they've been in. And I hear it all the time. I mean, even Riley was looking for a marketing internship. I'll go back to Riley here a second. She was looking for a marketing internship, and she went to this place, and when they first told her, when they met her, they're like, oh, we don't hire anybody right out of high school. We look for juniors or whatever. Then they saw her portfolio. And they said, oh, we'll find a job for you. So they created a job for her, and so it really just goes to show what these kids can accomplish and have accomplished. So I use this with the kids on the first day, but this is Diego. Some of you may know Roberto, who's in school now, but this is brother Diego, who Diego's had a great run. I mean, he used his high school portfolio. Mizzou snapped him up. He's built on that portfolio. Like early on, within the first year, he was going to Super Bowls because he's working for the NFL. And so he made some contacts, and next thing you know, this kid's doing video work for the NFL, and he got to go shoot some. He was very few people shooting the Miley Cyrus concert at the Super Bowl, because of course a lot of it was locked down. Best thing out of that, though, was I think Miley herself retweeted his picture. That's the thing he's proud of. And I think, I can't think of it. It's one of the designer icons that designed the outfit she was wearing. They retweeted his picture. So he was really psyched about that. But it just really shows you, it's just one example of a ton of them where kids have, taken what they've learned in high school and made something out of it. And we're certainly really proud of these 3, because since I've also been at East, we've had 3 kids who have either been Pulitzer finalists or Pulitzer winners. So that's pretty cool. We've had both Laura and Paige were on staff there at Harbinger, and both of them won Pulitzers. We're part of team reporting and won those. And the best thing about Morgan is Morgan won her Pulitzer as an intern. Or no, excuse me, she didn't win a Pulitzer. I thought she won it originally, but I think we found out that it was just a finalist. But she was a Pulitzer finalist as an intern, as part of a project. She did a lot of the data reporting and things with it. So it's really pretty cool. So the level of success has been there for the kids. And like I said, it doesn't matter to me whether they go into journalism or not. I think it's just picking up these skill sets that start in the journalism 1 class and go from there. So prepare for it. It's not going to be easy, and they're going to have to push themselves along. But again, give lots of feedback, and I'm always available to talk to kids or talk to you. So there's my phone number that comes right to my desk, but the best way probably is just to email me. The 6680 number probably doesn't ring through during the day, but I'll return those pretty quickly, and I certainly answer emails pretty quickly as well. So feel free if there's any questions as we go. Hate that I couldn't be there to meet y'all in person this time, but I covered some of the basics of the class, and then from there, they would be looking to apply for staffs. And I can certainly answer some of those questions later, but I've kept this one going too long as it is. So I will cut it off there. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. Thank you and have a good night.